again. And so, welcome everybody to today's panel discussion, which is entrepreneurial singing. So let me just do a little screen share here. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, go away. Slideshow.
All right.
Okay, so this is Transformative Talks. Entrepreneurial singing with Eapen Leubner, the founder of Art Song Colorado, and Sam Martin, the founder of Cincinnati Song Initiative. So Eapen Leubner is the founder of Art Song Colorado and has performed around the world as a lyric tenor, from Alaska to Florida, Albania to St. Martin, with stops at Brooklyn Academy of Music and Carnegie Hall. He is known for his roles in new and rare opera. He performed in Glory Denied by Tom Ciapullo at Chelsea Opera, L'Elisir d'Amore by Donizetti at Opera Fairbanks, and The Astronaut's Tale by Fusel at the Encompass New Opera Theater. Eapen most recently performed Serenade for Tenor, Horn, and Strings with the Chamber Orchestra of the Springs. He has released 3 albums as the Denver Art Song Project, the predecessor organization to Art Song Colorado, and was the executive producer for Marginalized Voices, starring John Ziesoltz and Jeremy Rager. Eapen, welcome. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
being
great to be here.
Yeah.
And then we have
Pianist Sam Martin is a dynamic artist in demand as a partner for recital, chamber, choral, orchestral, opera, and music theater performances. His stylistic versatility has resulted in concert appearances both nationally and internationally, recently including Germany and Mexico. As an entrepreneur and administrator, he is the founding artistic director of the Cincinnati Song Initiative, an award-winning nonprofit concert series dedicated to the promotion of innovation of art song. A native of New York, Sam holds degrees from the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music and Ithaca College. His training was enhanced as a fellow of the 2019 Fall Island Vocal Arts Seminar, a program devoted to the intense study and performance of contemporary American art song, led by luminaries Stephanie Blythe and Alan Louis Smith. Great. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. We are
Go
so
Bombers. I didn't realize there was a separate another IC person here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they did away with the bomber mascot a couple years ago for political correctness reasons. I think.
What? I was the bomber.
I know.
Absolutely nuts. I did the push-ups and everything. Yeah.
Man, did all this
I wore the
work
head. Yeah.
You've got me beat there, Eapen.
That's
Hilarious.
awesome. Well, we are Sing for Your Lives, and we like to say you transform your singing, you transform your life. We do workshops, classes, panel discussions, vocal coaching programs, and music advocacy research. And you can visit our website, singforyourlives.com, to learn more about that. And without further ado, let's dive right in. So we got some questions for you guys. The first being, what inspired you to start a concert series?
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, Sam, you're on.
Me first? Okay, well, let's see. There are several things that inspired me to start a concert series. I started Cincinnati Song Initiative back in 2016. And looking back on it, it seems really, really crazy, but I actually officially founded the organization while I was in the last semester of my master's degree at CCM in the spring of 2016. So I was still a student. But I think the reason why I was so inspired and motivated to begin it while I was still in school was I became very, very passionate. And this started actually at Ithaca College with my piano teacher there, who programmed a lot of themed programs. In this case, it was for solo piano recitals, but he would bring together our studio or the entire piano department and curate these themed projects and series, usually based around a specific composer, but could be any sort of thematic material. And there would be, if there were multiple concerts, there would be this sort of through line and this contiguous thread from concert to concert that just felt really cool, because you would see people come back for the series of concerts and be invested in this sort of overarching theme. And then I got to CCM for my master's degree, and I continued to be motivated and inspired by my teacher there, Ken Griffiths, the director of collaborative piano studies there, and his passion for art song, and in his art song literature classes, and in his deep dive seminars into specific composers. So we would spend entire semesters studying the music and the styles of Poulenc, Strauss, composers like that, Britten, Fauré, with very specific and unique styles that really are owed, some in-depth study. So all that sort of got me boiling over by the end of my master's, and I had so many ideas for my own sets of themed concerts that I thought would be, intriguing. And coupled with that, I had this sort of voice in the back of my head that had interest in sort of administrative and back-end and operational things, like building a website, building a ticket page, like organizing and producing an event. And so the sort of confluence of those two passions and interests resulted in me starting a concert series, and specifically for art song, because that was what I was passionate about and interested in delving more into at the time that I started an organization. There was no art song organization, no organization dedicated to the promotion and innovation of song here in Cincinnati. And so it seemed like a very simple and obvious thing to do to start here. And there's such a wealth of incredible singers here and in this region. So that's the probably too long, quick answer for how I started CSI. We're now in our 6th season, and time is flying.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Any
well,
particular themes that you have curated a show around that felt like they were particularly passionate for you?
Yeah. So in our first couple of years, let's see, we have done a Lacey series covering. We did a 3-concert series covering all of the Lacey's composers. We did one evening of all the Duparc songs, which is not something that people tend to hear in one sitting. We have an ongoing American series to sort of pay homage to the fact that we are an American organization and the fact that American art song is really coming of age here in the 21st century. And so that's our vehicle to be featuring brand new works, music that was performed in the composed in this country by American composers, because we spend so much time studying European and music and composers from other countries. So quite a lot of different thematic projects. We did a 4-season long Spanish series, which I am so passionate about, and I love that music. And I think that a lot of people aren't too familiar with it, and it's not as widely performed or studied as it should be. So that's just a sampling.
Yeah.
I love it. My dissertation was Poulenc, so every time anybody's doing anything Les Six, I'm like, give me more.
I mean, he could have had his own thematic series, but
I know.
we
Oh my
wanted to
God.
get all 6 in because he's like the star of the show.
Oh, that's a whole other like panel discussion we could do on just on Poulenc.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. I use Kenneth Griffith's textbook for Russian diction when I teach that class. So that's cool.
Wonderful. Eapen, same question.
Yeah. So if there's a smartest guy in the room, it's definitely not me. So my reasoning for starting this is entirely almost mental health based. We moved to Colorado in 2014, and I was touring a lot. And when I was home, my wife was like, "You need a hobby. You've got to do something while you're here besides like prep for the next show." And so it really just started out with me just making an album. That was the way it started, as Denver Art Song Project in 2015 with another IC alum, Mallory Bernstein. And so that was great. Fun, learned a lot. And then we started doing concerts, and one thing led to another. We started doing series, and I think that was the inception of it. And then the pandemic hit right as we were about to become a nonprofit. So we incorporated in February 2020, only to have the pandemic hit in March of 2020. And so let it not be said that my timing's not
Perfect.
perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so really, I think the big thing was I'm not I never was a particularly scholarly singer. Like I'm not wise in this. And so one of the things that I found was a real like the unexpected delight of this concert, the idea of Arts on Colorado as a nonprofit, and the work, the conscious that we did, is that basically I hang out with really smart singers who introduce me to new music, and then I get to know it and we turn it into shows. I think the next question was about like what kind of shows have we done, and the key there for the shows was really have you like we do very populist kind of themes. So one show might be monsters, creatures, and legends, which is all spooky songs, or April Fool's songs, which are all like the dumbest art songs that you could ever imagine that will make you laugh, even if it's in a foreign language, or religious carols and art songs, where it's just more focused in on like the spiritual aspect of it. We do that around the holiday season. Not to mention, I love the whole idea of what is an art song, which is something that I collaborated with Graham and Stephanie on, about just introducing somebody to the delights of classical vocal singing, as we go through through these concert series. And so that's kind of how Arts on Colorado came to be, and our mission is really to provide professional opportunities to Colorado artists. So I mean, that's one of the big things that's embedded into this organization, is we're gonna pay a good, maybe slightly better than beer and pizza money to our artists as they make this stuff and they do these shows and they kind of make an artistic legacy here in Colorado, and support them through that.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we started the concert series.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Community
it's been so
building.
exciting to watch that grow and watch that. I don't know. It's been really cool to be a part of that.
It's even despite the pandemic, it's really kind of taken off in a big way.
Yeah.
There's some really amazing things happening, especially on the Front Range side right now. When we got in touch with you, Eapen, we were just talking before we started the panel discussion here about kind of the connections between. I talked to Sam on the phone a number of years ago, and then talked to Eapen. We met Eapen through a mutual friend, because we were wanting to start a concert series out here in Grand Junction, because we saw a need for. There were other concert series that were dedicated to instrumental music, and they were pretty successful out here, and they still are. But there wasn't really anything specifically geared towards vocal music, and we saw a huge need for that, and we wanted to be performing more ourselves as well. Like we were kind of coming into our vocal age of like, okay, we can actually like do things now that we couldn't do before. And we wanted to create some opportunities for ourselves to sing, but we wanted to create opportunities for other regional, local, and just to bring in people to this area that could infuse the artistic scene with a little more life. And so it just worked out really well, and just made sense to team up with what was Denver Art Song Project. You were looking to expand into more of the state. We wanted to start something out here, so it was like, well, let's do this thing together and make something happen. So that's been a lot of fun to like create something from these different concerts together, collaborating across the state, and making, like, we did a bunch of video concerts over the pandemic when we couldn't do live concerts, and kind of learned all sorts of new skill sets, but learning how to curate a concert, and learning how to create it from scratch, and how to market it, and how to book it, and making a lot of mistakes and making it messy, but making it work at the same time.
But then also, I think once you get out of school, it's a little more difficult to have a reason to create a recital to give, and to curate that, and to like come up with a music that you feel really passionate about. And so this gives artists an opportunity to keep that going.
Totally, to figure out how to do something that you want to create, rather than you're assigned a recital, or you've been asked to do a specific role or something. It's like, oh, let's just create something that we want to do, something that we feel needs to be said. Like a lot of the concerts that we created through Art Song Colorado had some pretty, I think, important, like you talked about in your bio, Eapen, the Marginalized Voices concert, and then you just finished up this Voices of the African Diaspora. there are important messages that can be shared through art song. I think if we know how to tell the stories that are going to make a difference for people's lives and curate these concerts to follow those stories. We did another one that was about women's suffrage at the centennial anniversary of the passage of women's suffrage. And these are important messages that we have a really powerful medium to get those messages across.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, and I think Sam, I'm not sure if I heard you say that, but if when you start an organization like this or a concert series, I think it sounds like we both had a similar experience where you look at the market in our area and you say, well, where's the gap? And I bet if a singer looked at the market 9 times out of 10, it would be, there is no art song series in my town or in my state or in my region. And so we'll never turn the dial and make classical vocal music popular if we don't look at the market and fix that gap.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that was your experience. It sounds like it was. I think if I heard you right, I mean,
Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, surprisingly, it was given that Cincinnati is, a decently sized city with an incredible vocal training and piano training program in this area. It was surprising, but yes, that's exactly right, Eapen. And I mean, another thing that strikes me as being right on the hit the nail on the head, Graham and Stephanie, is this idea that one thing that I think separates recitals in an academic setting that might be assigned to students, or even if, say, the students can pick their repertoire, there's these just sort of check boxes of time periods and styles that are important to cover because the purpose is to sort of gain an education through it. Then what I experienced after I started CSI, and I think I experienced it while it was happening, so it was very revelatory to me, was that being responsible for professional art song organization and the curation of recitals, the goal had to switch. If you want to build an audience, a ticket buying audience, you guys were talking about the stories that are able to be told through art song. It's important to frame things through that lens when curating these sorts of concerts that you want to build a community and an audience around, rather than them having be some sort of academic exercise. So
yes,
the obviously the body of repertoire to choose from is the same, art song, as blah blah. But in terms of the goal and how you go about it, completely changes between sort of student academic setting on the Hill and out here trying to build a community audience.
Yeah,
Testify.
one of the total. I'm sorry, Eapen, go ahead.
I just said testify. That's
Yeah,
all.
absolutely. One of our kind of soapboxes lately has been part of why we left academia to pursue our organization, is that in many ways, Western music education sort of teaches the impact out of music. It teaches us about the mechanics and how the technique should go together and how long, the duration of each note and the style periods. But we forget that all music is about the impact. It's not about perfection of, the mechanical aspects of it. And so when the recital becomes about ticking boxes, yes, I can sing a high C and I can demonstrate that in this song that I am singing for you. Yes, I can sing Puccini. Here is my, my early 20th century or like late romantic like box that I can check off. Yes, I can see, when it becomes about style periods, languages, then we lose sight of the impact that we can have on our audience, and we're just trying to sort of get the degree. When it's something that we're curating ourselves and some deep message that we feel compelled to share, some element of compassion or empathy that we can kind of bake into our voices and into the performance, then it has such a deeper purpose. And that's what music is for. It's not for singing mechanically perfectly or playing mechanically perfectly.
Yeah, and it's an unanswerable question, or at least I don't have the answer, but it's interesting to pose. It's this concept of, do you need to go through that process in your life in order to then sort of bloom into what we're talking about now? Because I know it was my academic situations and scenarios and experiences that inspired me to do this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So is one necessary for the other? I don't know, but I can't. What I'm hearing everybody sort of agree on is that, especially Graham and Steph, you guys, had to leave your academic jobs to pursue this sort of angle of this. Is maybe are those two things not super compatible, to live in both worlds at the same time? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that
Yeah,
it's
I
not
don't.
so much like an issue of not being compatible. It's just that we found that there are missing pieces
Yeah.
in the way that we're educating people, and that we're kind of losing sight. We're losing the forest for the trees in many ways.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of a higher education in music is to be able to do these things that we're talking about doing and that we are doing, but the the connection between here's how to sing and here's how to interpret a song, and then making the jump from that to here's how to create your own recital, here's how to curate a concert, here's how to do all of these entrepreneurial things, that's by and large is not there. So that's what Sing for Your Lives is. We're trying to do more of filling in those gaps of how do you create a career
Right.
for yourselves,
Yeah.
and how do you create your own opportunities, how do you go out and do stuff like this, even if you don't know how to, you haven't been taught how to do that. It is possible. You can, you can go just blindly into it for sure, which is I think what we all ended up doing, and
Yeah.
figuring it out the hard way. But it doesn't have to be like that.
Right. And I think it's also not a one size fits all approach. I think there are some people who really need. I would be doing all of my degrees was a really beneficial thing for me, and I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity and for the opportunity to teach in universities for a decade. I think that was invaluable experience, and I'm so grateful for all of that. I grew so much as a person and a singer and a teacher and pedagogue. But I think that the university system would do well to infuse their music education with more of the impact that music has rather than just the mechanics.
Yeah, how to create that impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into the next question. What do you feel like you're able to communicate through curating concerts that you might not be able to communicate as readily, as effectively by just performing yourself?
Should I take this one first?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Eapen.
Yeah. All right. So I think the big thing about me curating concerts, which is something that I've come to really love, is that I've always been sort of slightly obsessed with storytelling and with narrative structure. And so, as you both know, when we did the women's suffrage show, I was down with writing fake letters that would sort of tell the story and frame up the songs. And I think that idea of storytelling for me has always just been a part of my life since I was a little kid. I mean, I have a weekly Dungeons and Dragons game that I've been doing since I moved out here, another hobby that my wife kind of kindly recommended to me. And but that idea of narrative and storytelling, I did a lot of recitals prior to Denver Art Song and Art Song Project and Art Song Colorado. And in those, they were all academic recitals. And, I think the audience that I did them for liked it. They thought it was, I sang well at them.
Mm-hmm.
And they, but they were academic. They had no narrative structure. And now when I walk out of a show, the audience response that I get is, I had no idea, or this all of a sudden classical singing makes sense, and that switch for me really reinforced the idea that curating what was more than just checking the boxes or covering all the bases, and you could dip into novelty songs or just weird pieces that maybe people wouldn't get, but if you put it in a narrative structure, they're much more attuned to it because they've got a story to kind of latch on to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Sam, how about you?
Well, I think I basically intimated at it before. The thematic programming and the concert to concert structure that sort of inspired me to start CSI is what I think has really helped us to begin developing an audience, because we build interest and audience engagement through that. And the other thing is getting artists, the artists that will come and perform on these curated concerts, jazzed about them. Also helps get the audience jazzed, because what we have them do is we have them speak before each set. They build a rapport with the audience. That sort of fourth wall is broken between like hoity-toity performer and, you know, audience member. So curating the overall thematic programs as well as the experience on a larger basis than just what the repertoire is what I think, you know, enables me to sort of have contribute to that versus just performing on my own.
Mhm.
So many concert series, you know, like say take a chamber music series. Their whole in any city, their whole structure is they just bring in a string quartet and then a piano soloist 2 months later, and then a vocal soloist 2 months after that, and a piano soloist 2 months after that. They get to bring whatever program they want. So it's really all about just coming to hear that artist, and you know, oftentimes that specific repertoire that might interest people, but there's no continuity between concerts, you know? And so that is the missing thread and the thing that makes these sort of art song organizations unique, I think, because the artists that you hire, they have to buy into the concept of the organization, because they're not just being invited, at least with CSI, to sing whatever they want. We often will collaborate, but I'm saying you're being invited to come join our Lacey series. What sort of Lacey's rep would you like to sing? Not we want you because you're you.
Yeah.
Bring whatever you want and we'll drool because it's you, you know. There's, you know, we're trying to get people motivated and engaged in the genre and hire incredible world-class artists through that, but we want everybody to sort of buy into the concept of what it is that they're taking part in, rather than anybody sort of worshiping the artist or just one program, you know, that we're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I have a question about that. Do you think you would allow someone to sing something who doesn't align with whatever message it is that you're trying to share? If an artist felt sort of conflicted about whatever story you were trying to tell through the performance you were curating.
I'm not sure. That's never happened, luckily. I guess my gut reaction would be to say, you know, if it's someone that we really wanted to bring because we respect their artistry a lot, and if they really had a problem with the program we were asking them to participate in, seek to find something else. You know, we could say, well, you know, if you don't like this program, just wait 5 minutes and turn around and look at us 2 months later, and it'll be completely different, something else that maybe we could fit you into. So that's an interesting question. Luckily, I haven't run into that problem before. We've typically had experiences where everybody's sort of aligned in the values and the messages that we are trying to send.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I've found that it's also really, it's fulfilling to be able to do something that's bigger than yourself too. You know, that I can't sing all of the things because I have the voice that I have, but the stories that we've often told through these concerts that we've set up have required, and by design have required a variety of different voices, that they're, you know, it's like there are different, in some cases, very realistically, there are different characters involved in the story. And you know, so it's like you're involving, even if I am performing on that, I'm part of something that's larger than just me, and so I'm contributing to a greater picture of something. And that to me is really, that's a cool thing. That's there's something fulfilling about that I can't necessarily get by just doing my own thing, which, you know, I still love doing doing staged Winterreise was this incredible experience that I got to create for myself, but it's still not the same as being a part of a larger picture, a larger project.
Yeah. Cool.
100%.
I've never had the problem that you mentioned. I will say, probably because there's kind of two ways.
Oh no.
Reach out to me and with an idea, now that they know that I do like narrative concerts. And so like I had a soprano reach out, and she said, I'm interested in doing these new song cycles about is it correct to say this? Cowgirls? Women cow people? I don't know. Cowgirls.
Women cow
And
people. I like that better.
you can complain about my sexism in the comments. And so, but her words, not mine. And so she came to me with this, and we're going to work this now for a year. So it's going to be a pretty easy conversation. When I have an idea for it, I reach out to singers that I know or who have expressed interest in working with me, and I said, okay, this is kind of the rep that I'm looking for. Bring your ideas that would fit in this theme. And usually when you frame it up like that, and people now understand what Arts on Colorado is, the conversations are really easy. They're not hard conversations, because I think it's kind of like getting hired to do an opera, only you get to choose some stuff about it. Less like I'm just showing up and I'm going to sing Don Ottavio.
Right.
And it's the same Don Ottavio that everybody before me sang. So it's kind of cool that way.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, there's a whole different level of creativity involved with it.
Yeah, and especially if you let them kind of co-curate, come with ideas,
Right.
say, okay, that's not actually going to work. Let's try to tie it together this way. Then you get these, and it's a very enriching conversation. And I think that it's a real pivot for a lot of singers. I use that word very, very carefully, but it's a pivot for singers because so many times we're just hired to do a thing, and you don't get to engage your imagination or your creativity except within the confines of Don Ottavio or whatever. And so I think that has provided a lot of enthusiasm. And if I may, there was one singer came to me and he said, I'd like to do a show about my immigration experience.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, so he did it live. We did it like 4 years ago, and I'm returning to it this coming year. We're going to shoot a video project of it. And because his like slice of story was just like, it just is like my parents are immigrants, and I just felt so just drawn in, and like it just grabbed me and shook me. And he did all of that himself. I had nothing to do with it. I just said, do an immigrant thing because you mentioned that you were an immigrant. And he was, or he was like, I've got this immigrants show. Sorry. And I said, yeah, do it. Here's money. Go make that happen. And it was great, brilliant show. And that his slice of it was especially brilliant because it was truly his personal experience. And that was very exciting to be able to support.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool.
Very cool.
All right. Next question. What challenges and benefits have you encountered as an entrepreneurial musician? Sam, let's start with you.
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is basically that there's pros and cons to everything, right? I think to being an entrepreneurial musician and sort of this concept of creating opportunities out of thin air, either for yourself or for other people, is that you are inherently, at least starting inherently on the outside of sort of the establishment. And what I mean by that is you're sort of building a reputation from scratch. You don't come with any sort of cachet or gravitas. And not that that is necessary at all. And in fact, I think it's vital that self-started organizations like all of ours are part of the mix. But I think there's an inherent challenge in that just because it takes time. And by time, I mean years for people, audience, artists to not take you seriously, but just build an awareness that your organization exists, or that it is an organization that they would want to take part in either as an artist or go attend a concert and give money to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as an audience member. So I think that's a challenge. I mean, I approach that challenge joyfully because it's just a challenge. It's a problem to solve, and it's a never ending one, so you always just want to stay on that upward trajectory and stay empathetic and human and caring about your core values the whole time. I think that's the whole crux of being an entrepreneurial musician, is this sort of, you're doing it on your own. You gain family members and supporters along the way, but you're not an assistant general manager at the Met or something, and everything that comes with, right?
Right.
So I think what I first said sort of sums up my feelings the whole time. You don't come with the cachet of sort of an establishment situation, but there's pros and cons to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it affords you the freedom to create what you want to create, but it also, like you said, until there's an amount of awareness out there about what you're doing, and until you have found your tribe, the people who feel aligned with whatever it is that you're trying to do, that building process is a challenge for sure.
Yeah. And I will also add that that's exactly right. And I will also add that, as far as funding, there's also, I call us a grassroots organization because we don't have an angel donor. We don't have one or two or three people that fund our entire seasons. Now that's amazing because it feels amazing because that there's a large group of people funding at a small level individually, your operations, which is awesome. The other thing that's great about that is that we're not beholden to anybody. And so I don't feel stifled or straitjacketed to program certain things or to run things in a certain way. That's awesome. On the other hand, the organizations that get an angel donor or a couple angel donors just to, make sure that things stay afloat, if you got them, good, that's lucky and that's amazing. And that's all about relationship building. So that's also sort of like a balanced situation, the funding.
Yeah, absolutely. Eapen, same question.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've talked a lot. Sam really said it so well. I agree with all the benefits of this that you've laid out. I think I wake up and I fall asleep thinking about money. Like when I think about the challenge, the number one challenge of being an entrepreneurial singer, it's that there's, I've always said embedded into this organization that everybody, except me for now, but my board is trying to change it, gets paid. And that has been and figuring that out has been one of the biggest challenges, because I think you said benefits and challenges that I've had to deal with on a regular basis, because it's, the benefits of paying our artists are it's so much, you get so much more. And it's not necessarily about the money, because like I said, I'm not we're not the Met, but them knowing that they're being valued as a professional just really changes the mindset about an Art Song Colorado gig. It changes it changes their personal investment, as opposed to, well, let's just charge tickets at the door and then we'll sort of split the money, and it's too loosey goosey. We have to have that structure in place. And even if it's not as much as I'd like to do yet, it sets the precedent that we do that. So all of the time I'm thinking about the funding, and we're slowly building up a monthly, Patreon and doing all of those things. And we're slowly getting monthly donations that help make a difference. And then we're getting grants, and that helps as well. And then we're partnering with larger organizations that can foot the bill for, a chamber orchestra. And they're happy to do that because they don't get to explore. And I think that's one of the benefits as well, is when you partner, finding those partnerships, you can have a conversation with another organization. And I'll use Chamber Orchestra of the Springs a lot because I work so much with them since I've moved out here, and with Thomas Wilson, the conductor. I can say, hey, there are some great pieces of vocal rep that you have not touched yet, because think about vocal rep on a day in and day out basis like I do.
Yeah.
So, those are things, and yeah, it's not technically art song, but whatever. And so I think that having those partnerships is another added benefit, is that you get a chance to really do some storytelling outside of the recital, which is very intimate, but you can do sort of grander storytelling. Not yet, and we did our first opera this year. To be truly honest, I directed that. And it looks like we might be doing it again, but we're just digging into that classical vocal storytelling, partnering with other organizations that can help gain awareness and that collaboration. And I would say that one of the biggest benefits is my mind is blown at how much these more mature organizations are willing to help me out
Mm-hmm.
and help out Arts on Colorado. I had no idea, because when I'm going for jobs as a singer, me or my agent contacts them and says, I got this thing. And they're like, well, you're just a voice in the crowd. But now that I've decided to stay here in Colorado and do something, like it's a different, more meaningful, more warm relationship, which has been exciting for me as a performer, as a curator, blah, 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 as a producer, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's better for the overall health of the community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Speaking of the money component, my brother had an interesting thing to say. I know. My brother had an interesting thing to say when we were deciding whether we should, stay at the university, whether we should just jump ship and pursue this thing full time. He said, as long as you have a boss, there's a ceiling. He said, no boss is ever going to pay you more than they themselves make. And so is it harder, like, you don't have some organization handing you a paycheck once a month, twice a month, but you also don't have a ceiling as to what you are capable of achieving.
Yep.
And that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that the benefit is there is no ceiling. The challenge is there is no basement.
Right. Yeah.
There's no safety net there. So
Nope.
it's a higher risk situation for sure. It's also, there's a lot more potential for higher reward and creative reward too. I mean, beyond just the financial aspect of it, like the reward of like being able to express what you want to express in your performing or in your curating or in your whatever role you take on in this kind of an endeavor. You have so much more artistic and creative freedom to produce something that is meaningful to you, but meaningful to the audience as well. And that's just like you don't get to do that when you get hired to sing a role. Like, you create that role and you do the best to portray a story through that role, but there are a lot more constraints to that creativity in that kind of a situation. This you can we're like, well, let's decide what story we want to tell, and then figure out what songs will tell that story, and then fill in the blanks in between.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that if you're talking, if I was talking to, if our audience are people who are like, I think I'd like to start an arts organization in my town that does art song, I would say that the one thing that you've got to plan for is that it's going to be a loss leader, as they say in the business world, for a long time. Like, we have 4 albums out there. I've invested a lot of money in that, and they've made me like $50 on Spotify, and then people buy albums occasionally if they, happen to want to have them on their bookshelves. But for the most part, it's like, nah. So you've got, as you go into it, go in with your eyes open to say, there's going to be a significant kind of financial investment that you've got to account for. And just get good at identifying what your expenses are going to be. Spreadsheets are great, folks. Make a spreadsheet, tally up the numbers, and then figure out how you simplify to bring that number to a place where you can live with that risk.
Yeah.
And that's a really important skill that I had to learn as a singer, right? As a soloist. It was like, okay, do I take that small contract for a new opera that's a world premiere that'll 99 times out of 100 will never be performed again? Or do I let that go? And do I go with another one that I think is got more legs, that would be that I might get to do again someday. And you have to make those as a soloist, I had to make those that was a constant decision-making process for every gig that I looked at. I made a choice not to take every job. You have to do the same thing when you're starting out your own company. You have to make a choice not to partner with every organization, and saying no is hard. I don't like saying no to anybody, but it's a great skill to have.
Really important skill to have. Yeah. That actually, so you got right into the final question here is what if you had
Sorry.
to, no, that's great. It's a perfect segue. But like if you had to do it all again, or if you were to start a new organization beyond what you're doing, what would you do differently?
I would not start it a month before a pandemic. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, you should have thought about that one.
I know.
Better.
Plan better next time.
Yeah, exactly. No, Sam, take this one, man.
This has stumped me, but I'm so thankful you asked the question, because I never thought about. It's tiring to think about redoing it. I'm not so sure. I think along the lines of what Eapen was saying, I mean, hindsight is 2020, right? But I think that despite the vision that I had for how to, program things and curate things, and that was my driving inspiration for it all in the beginning. Despite that clarity, in hindsight, I can see that things were sort of scattershotted because I was building the plane as I was flying it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that actually, and this is kind of wonky, but I think just on an internal side, if I were to redo it all again, I would have done more research and have gone in a little more clear-headed about like policies for internally, things like an organizational structure. And I knew nothing about a board or how to lead a board or how to inspire a board and how to get a board to work on behalf of the organization. And that is the backbone of any nonprofit. And given that's hard stuff to do for anybody. So I don't know if it's possible that anybody just starting from scratch would be able to have that on lockdown in any situation. But as I reflect back and with everything that I've learned, I was totally ignorant as to the fact of the role that the board plays in terms of galvanizing the mission of the organization. And every good executive deserves a passionate board, because no one can do it on their own. And board members are there to help sustain and grow and fulfill the mission of the organization. That's why one joins a nonprofit board, So I suspect that's probably something I would like to have had more clarity on if I were to restart things. But I take every lesson as I cherish every lesson that I learned. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say, for our purposes, what we've been doing, because Sing for Your Lives is not a nonprofit, so we don't have a board that, it's right now it's us, which is nice in some levels, because we're able to be really agile if we need to change plans, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot to do between two people. But I would say that in the early days of when we were getting started with Art Song Colorado, and we were kind of just like, well, let's do a show next month and let's throw it together and see what happens. There was really no planning involved. There was no real, we had no clue how to market anything. We just let's just put posters around town and see what happens, and put some posts on Facebook that. There was no marketing. And having learned over the last few years that there are better ways to do that, that's I think understanding how to communicate what it is that you have to offer is it's a skill that you have to grow. It's not something you just are all of a sudden somebody tells you how to do it and you're like, oh, okay, that's it. But there are a few things that understanding that you're not selling a product, you're actually selling an opportunity for somebody to gain to understand a different version of themselves. They want a future version of themselves that's better than their current version of themselves. And so as a musical organization, you offer that opportunity for transformation through the music, through the performance. And so that you're not really selling the performance, you're selling that future version of what somebody wants to experience. That idea was pretty mind blowing once we kind of figured that out.
Right.
And it makes a huge difference. So just saying like, hey, I'm doing a recital, come see it. Like nobody cares about you doing a recital.
I think as musicians, we're good at empathizing with the stories that we're telling, with the characters that we're, portraying. But we don't often think about empathizing with the audience and figuring out what it is that they are seeking and how we can reach them the best way. And when we started doing Sing for Your Lives stuff, trying to figure out how to communicate it in a way that they would understand it, because we're like, no, we're telling them exactly what it is, but from our own perspective of we know what it is because we're the ones who created it, and so understanding how to empathize with them and how to look at what we're doing from a fresh lens, that has been an eye-opening thing, I think.
Ditto.
Yeah.
But that is the greatest litmus test and recurring gift, is that audience feedback, because it keeps you honest. And for me, as far as I'm concerned, it keeps my compass in the right direction to make sure that one of my family friends was helping me organize the company because they have some business background back in 2016. And I was about to pull the trigger on filing it as a nonprofit organization. And this family friend said, they were supporting me and knew that was the goal for it to be a nonprofit. They said, before you do this, just make sure there's something I want you to keep in mind. And they said, remember, when you found a nonprofit organization, this organization belongs to everybody, it doesn't belong to you. And it was gripping. And of course, that was my goal. I didn't want this for any sort of power or authority or any of that stuff, but it was still earth shattering. And the reason why I tell that story is because in this context, that is always my guiding North Star. And speaking about audience feedback and stuff, that is the true litmus test for if you're doing this for the audience that you seek to serve rather than yourself or some other subconsciously or consciously selfish reason.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's challenging. Like we as the leaders of these organizations, everybody deserves fulfillment from it. Obviously we wanted to do it so that fulfills something for us selfishly, but at the same time, we exist to serve others.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a constant balance.
Yeah, we're not curating recitals so that we can be the only audience member, right?
I've actually had that experience.
But I was
early on.
Exactly. But there are people that do that. So it bears saying out loud.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I would say just in general, I joked when I said don't start before a pandemic. I would say, I think I would almost want to have, and I know this sounds insane, but more failures early on that would have given me better lessons sooner. Don't get me wrong, I'm awesome at failing, like so good, but I could have been better and learned faster. The learning curve could have been probably more vertical. I would have liked, I think I would, if I could do it again, I would want to fail faster.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
As long as you know that, future you reliving the past wouldn't give up. That's the other thing, this stuff is so worthwhile, and it's important to keep pushing through, because failure and lessons learned is like absolutely ground zero expectations, like that's going to happen. So if anybody's watching this and is feeling inspired or interested in starting their own thing, that is just part of the process. And like Eapen said, the more failures you experience, really the more lessons you learn.
Yes.
And don't give up. People at the top levels of arts administration are failing all the time.
Totally.
That's just a part of it, and the strength of your organization and the people supporting it. one failure doesn't mean the whole thing needs to be disbanded or given
Right.
up on.
Mhm.
No, it shows
It's
you
a-
how to do it better the next
Exactly. I feel
Yeah.
like it's not even a failure. It's an opportunity to see what doesn't work. You know.
Exactly. It's always important to be able to zoom out to the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And, I always like to, if I'm feeling particularly sensitive about anything, I always remind myself, I'm like, Sam, there is 0% chance if, late at night when when we all like to stress about the shite going on in our lives, there is
Not me.
0% chance that anybody is laying up in bed at this very moment as you, thinking about whatever it is that you're thinking about that just went wrong. 0% chance. You were the only one fixated on this. No one else is losing sleep over this.
It's true.
30,000 foot view is very important, especially for a sort of top level administrator, regardless of the size of the company, because
Mhm.
Yeah.
the top level administrator is responsible for the vision and the overall directionality. So you have to be able to go there and not get
Yeah.
caught up in the minutia.
I saw a little cartoon that it summed this idea up really perfectly. There was kind of two sides of the picture. One was this dude that had all of these bricks that said failure, and they were like weighing him down and crushing him. And then the other side of it was the same guy, but he took those bricks and made staircase out of them. And he's stepping on top of them. So you have the choice to treat it as a failure and as like, okay, I suck at this and should just quit.
Right.
Or say, okay, that was interesting. I'm going to learn from that and create an opportunity to grow from that. And that's just a mindset shift. That
Yeah.
I think it can be hard when you're feeling like, oh God, I really wanted that to go. I wanted 100 people to come to this concert and 2 people came. But so why? Why did that happen? What could you have done differently? That's what you take from it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we have Hillary online with us today. Hillary, do you have any questions for these guys?
Hi, hold on just a second.
Oh, you are totally fine.
Sorry. It's like,
Hillary?
hi, it's like 9 o'clock here in the evening and I'm in my pajamas, like ready to.
Are you in Europe?
I'm in Egypt.
Holy cow. Welcome.
Thank you.
Wow, cool. Thank you, Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. How cool is that? We love it.
Yeah. I was able to come on and watch today because not everything Graham and Stephanie provide I'm able to do because of the time difference, but when something's in the evening, my time, it usually works out, and I'm trying to be better about participating and stuff. So anyway, I'll fix how I look.
You're
I'm in
You
my
look lovely.
But anyway, sorry to everyone watching this recording later. Also. No, I don't think I have any questions. I'm in a, Graham and Stephanie know this, but I'm in a place in my life where I'm a lot older. I don't have a lot of the performance experience and vocal experience. I was never a young artist. I didn't study music in college or anything like that. But I'm older and I want to do something with my voice, and I want to do something with music, and be involved more in performing arts in general. And so I appreciated what you both had to say. Just, I don't know if I have the guts to do what y'all have done and just, start something, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's on my mind, what could I do? What could I create? What could I provide? Do I see something that's missing, that I could fill that gap or that hole, as you all were talking about that earlier, but I don't know. So it's just, I don't know. We'll see what I do or come up with and what direction I go in at some point.
We're excited to see Hillary's doing this career coaching program, career mentorship program with us, starting up here soon. So, we're excited to see where that leads you.
Yeah.
You know what is a possibility, Hillary, without necessarily starting your own thing, because starting your own thing may or might not be for every person. That'd be a lot of things out there. If that doesn't end up being for you, or if you need more sort of insight, I always get requests. We're pretty small. I always get requests for people who are willing to be involved. And so I see if there's a way for them to be involved and see basically how things operate without them being responsible at the end of the day for any decision-making thing, whether it's a volunteer position or whether there's an internship at an organization. If you have a personal friend or someone who has their own organization, then you already have that relationship. And I've had people reach out to me, and I've created work for them just because it was clear to me that they were interested in learning more or helping out or something like that. But something like that could give you insight that you're looking for, whether you're looking for inspiration to start something or not. It could just give you more insight into what running an organization is.
Teaming up with an organization, like, you don't have to be the founder of it like these guys, but you were talking about the person that said, hey, I have this immigrant show I really want to do. Can we do it? And you're like, yes, here, take some money and run.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways to do that.
When I got my master's degree in education, I actually did an internship at the Metropolitan Opera Guild, and some of that was involving like curriculum writing for students and that were coming in to see these dress rehearsals and stuff at the Met, and I enjoyed that a lot. And so when I went back to Houston, I got involved in Houston Grand Opera just as a volunteer with the Guild, but I ended up writing like a K through 12 like curriculum guide for Madame Butterfly with them. But then I ended up going overseas, and I've been overseas for about 8 years now teaching. So because I work with international schools, but here in Egypt, it's been hard to find local opportunities. There just isn't the audience or the market, that is the language barrier and other factors, COVID and stuff like that. So it's been difficult, but I'm supposed to be moving to Taiwan in July, and there's going to be a lot more opportunities there that I just found out about this past week. And so I think when I get to Taiwan, I'll be able to connect more with people and volunteer. And there's like some community theater things starting to happen now there. And the music director at my school is very much involved at the Performing Arts Center in the city I'll be in. And so, so I'm hoping to make those connections and see what I can do there. And then I also have a few people I need to reach out in the United States about, maybe doing some part-time contract work with curriculum or ideas for schools or young children. So I don't know, I have a lot on my mind. It's just taking the time to make the connections and push for that, and really seeing what I can do with that. So
Awesome.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of possibilities on the horizon, and regardless of what does happen, your life is already inspiring to me.
I know.
The work that you already are doing.
Yeah.
So have a great time in Taiwan.
Yeah, thank you. It should be good. I hope. Fingers crossed that I even get there.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yeah, so.
All right. Well, we have to run. We have to hop on another call actually, but it's been awesome to talk with you guys. It's been
thank
really
you
so much for joining us.
Really enlightening conversation. So let's stay in touch.
Thank you
Thanks.
for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks
really
so much.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
All right. Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.